Freedom is not having to be attached to the result of a decision that you make, because really at the end of the day, what stops us from doing the thing that we want? It's thinking about what's going to be the outcome.
Welcome to the Your Business Untethered podcast, a space for freedom seekers ready to build and scale a business that supports their wildest dreams, even while traveling the world. Hi, I'm Dina, creator of Way of the Founder and your host. I imagine this podcast as a space where aspiring and established freedom entrepreneurs come to forge a path towards purpose, financial freedom, meaningful impact, and location independence. I'll be your guide as we defy the norm, heal old conditioning, and step into the leaders we were born to be. I myself am a firstborn, a daughter of divorcee, sister, girlfriend, professional coach, nomad, and expat of a decade plus, as well as yoga aficionado and energy healer. In my previous career, however, I worked a 9-to-5 as a professional fundraiser for American orchestras. Can you believe it? However, I needed more. I needed more freedom in my life. So 5 years ago, I called quits on resume success and claimed back the reins over my own life. What started with a one-way ticket to Vietnam and a single backpack filled to the brim has since grown into Way of the Founder, where I've helped hundreds of clients defy and heal from the path that we're told to follow, redefine freedom, fulfillment, and success on their own terms, and build impact-driven businesses that let them live and work from anywhere. Join me each week for deep dives into leadership, strategy, and mindset, as well as the healing that fuel the untethered CEO. That's you. Whether you're building your dream with a coconut flight ticket, wine glass, or coffee in hand, you are in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast, Your Business Untethered. I have been so excited for weeks now since I met Mia at the conference here in Da Nang to bring her on the podcast. And today we get to talk all things traveling, and I mean hardcore traveling, I mean ethical traveling, I mean culturally immersed traveling, and I mean traveling as an entrepreneur. Please, everyone, welcome Mia, who is here to talk about her exhilarating and exciting and unplanned and planned and wonderful trip from Serbia to Vietnam, not by plane, but on foot. Let's call it on ground. She is also a copywriter, a fantastic marketer, and I want to say she's someone who can really teach us a lot about messaging, specifically about value-based messaging. And Mia, I'm sure you'll tell us everything about what that means and how that integrates with a traveling and freedom-based lifestyle. Welcome, Mia. Please tell us, who are you? What do you do? What joys and which wisdom do you bring to the world, and why does this matter?
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here too. My name is Mia Kercher. For those who don't know me, I met Dina at this Vietnam travel festival, digital nomad festival, which I stumbled upon because I just recently finished my journey, as you said, from Serbia to Vietnam. So the goal was to drive my car from Serbia to Vietnam, and my car made it about halfway through, and I had to get rid of it. And then I had to get creative with just about every other kind of travel you can imagine. So there was one flight, which I couldn't help. And then after that, there was a bicycle, motorbike, there were some boats. I traveled by foot for a little bit. So there have been lots of different modes of transportation and travel, but it ended up being really an epic journey that taught me a lot about myself and what I really want out of life, and also just was a great adventure and a lot of fun and a lot of way to have amazing connections with local people that I met along the way in some countries that tend to be a lot less visited by tourists and travelers. And yeah, basically, I was running my business along the way. I am a launch copywriter, so people who sell online courses and do online coaching, especially, those are the people I help to sell their courses or their various coaching offers that they want to promote. And it's just really important to me to sell things in a way that works for the lifestyle that you want. So when you go out to launch a new product, a new offer, it doesn't consume everything that you have. You don't have to step away from your life and your loved ones and sacrifice the things you want to do to be able to do it. It really doesn't have to be that complicated. It can be simple and fun and something that brings you money for the life that you want to live.
Yeah, I remember when you were pitching your workshop at the conference, you said two lines. You were like, I traveled from Serbia to Vietnam with my cat on the ground. And also during that time, I increased my revenue by 60%. Come join my copywriting workshop. And I was like, absolutely, sign me up. Tell me all about this. So
Yeah.
right there, I mean, I really want us to have just really open conversation about what it means to be traveling, as you said, through countries that aren't typically traveled to by, I would say probably specifically by women, what that means, what you learn, but for the moments where you're like, oh shit, and the moments that made it all worthwhile. And then just to sort of give an overview of where I'm about to take this conversation, I'm really curious about what this trip did for and to your business. And again, what it means to run a business while you're immersing yourself in multiple different countries. I think for a lot of the audience who are, as you said, just starting out in business, it's like, oh, I want to do all of the traveling, but also I need to actually start a business. How do these two things come together? Because I can't be, or I don't want to be working 9 hours a day, but maybe I have to. And how do I combine the idea of freedom with the vision and the dream I have for my business? And can I combine it? And I feel like you're just the living and breathing example that, yes, absolutely. And traveling, in fact, can enhance your business. So let's start at the beginning. What led you to go on this adventure?
So I had been living in Serbia for the past 4 years, actually. And I kind of thought I was going to settle in Serbia. It really felt like the place for me for quite a while. And then in the past year, I basically just kind of started realizing maybe this wasn't the place where I wanted to settle and spend the rest of my time. I used to travel a lot. I would travel every month or every other month using Serbia as my base. But I just basically realized that some of the things that I was really craving and looking for just weren't available to me in Serbia. So one was having a more entrepreneurial community of people who are driven and ambitious, and also people who are personal growth minded and a bit more into spirituality and manifestation, some of those things that I'm into, where those people do live in Serbia, of course, but it's a bit harder to connect and to get into these communities because it's not a big international community there. So everything was happening in Serbian, which is a very difficult language to learn. And if you have a lot of other things going on, like a business and travel and all kinds of other things, it can be difficult to really, just become fluent in the language. So basically I realized, okay, maybe Serbia is not the place for me. I think it's time for me to go. And at first I thought, why don't I do a big road trip around Europe and kind of do a circle? I wanted to come back for this one festival that was happening in September. And as I started to think about it, there were only a couple places in Europe that I still really wanted to go and experience. Meanwhile, I had been to Bali last May. So that's about a year ago now. And I had a great time. And that was my first Asia experience. And I just realized, East sounds a lot more exciting. I really want to see things that I've never seen before, that are really different, that just really make me feel like I'm stepping into a different world. And I love road trips. I'm the kind of person who will just like throw my camping gear in the car and drive and see where it takes me. So I decided, why not do a road trip and see if I can get my car all the way to Vietnam.
And then what happened?
So the car made it to Afghanistan. So it really was about halfway. It was like 4 months out of my 8-month journey. I did make it to Afghanistan, but I was missing a document called the Carnet de Passage, which is like some type of insurance document that you need to enter a lot of Asian countries. And Pakistan required it, and all the countries surrounding Afghanistan also required it. So I ended up literally being backed into a corner where I wasn't able to get it further into any other countries. So that's why I left the car in Afghanistan.
Farewell, car.
I know. I'll miss it.
So what were some of the oh shit moments on your trip over here to Vietnam? And what were some of the moments that just offered you a completely new perspective on life, on business, on community, culture, humanity?
Yeah. So some shit moments there was a lot of bureaucracy, which I wasn't expecting that to be the challenge, having primarily traveled in Europe before, where it's so easy for Americans to get around, and a bit in South America, also really easy. But Asia turned out to be pretty difficult. For example, I wanted to go from Turkey into Iran. And when I started to look into the visa, I realized Americans cannot get into Iran without having a certified tour guide with them at all times, which is really not the way that I like to travel. And my car wasn't going to be able to get into Iran either because of that carnet de passage. And then as I started to research the other countries that I could get around, it was like almost impossible. I was researching Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, and none of them were able to get the car and me through by land. So I ended up doing a much more roundabout way than I thought I would, which was going up north through Georgia and Russia, and then through all the stands and back down again to head east. And then I think that was a really difficult one. Also, the when I realized, okay, no amount of creativity is going to get my car out of Afghanistan, and I am going to have to leave it at this point, which made me actually rethink the whole trip. I was thinking, should I just end it now and, come back another time with another trip? Just because I have a cat and we've traveled a lot by car, but we've never done other types of travel. And I was just like, can I bring her on buses? Is she gonna how are we gonna cross borders? It would just add so many more unknowns that I didn't know how she would handle it. So that was also another one that really made me rethink things. And then once I got to Southeast Asia, visas and borders got a lot easier, but they were a lot less receptive to the cat. So like buses and trains usually won't accept the cat. A lot of hotels won't accept the cat. So those were my biggest challenges that kind of threw big roadblocks in the way, where I was like, shit, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to give a lot of credit to my partner here. My partner has always done a lot of cat rescue. Everywhere he goes, he does a lot of cat rescue with his hands, with his feet, with his entire body, with his money, everything, right? He just throws himself into the trenches, and literally we can be on a walk and he's like, he has this instinct, right? He's like, wait a minute, there's a cat over there. And before I know it, we're spending hours just taking care of the cat, taking her to the vet, making sure she's fed. And together, he really introduced me into that lifestyle, because it is a lifestyle. We did a lot of cat rescue while we were living in Albania. And one day he leaves the apartment to take out the trash, and he comes back home. He looks at me wide-eyed and I'm like, what's up? Are you okay? And before I know it, I hear it coming out of his t-shirt. And inside his t-shirt, he has 5 kittens that he found hidden away in a corner at the trash cans. And he was like, they're too small. They won't survive. So I was like, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing? And the long story short is we were able to actually get all of these 5 kittens adopted to true cat lovers. We got them all vaccinated. We got them taken care of. And I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. And I was like, if we could, like, I would just want to keep at least a few of them, right? 5 is a bit much for me, but let's just keep a few of them. So we started looking at what would that look like as far as traveling, because we were traveling at the time. We're still traveling. Can we get the cats a passport? What does that even look like? And we were like, you know what? It's not something that we're willing to take on right now. These cats are better off if we just, really responsibly get them adopted to cat lovers and owners, right? So from that perspective, I kind of know just how big a commitment you must have had to yourself, to the trip, to your better half, to your cat, right? To just really be like, nope, Vietnam is the goal. I'm going to go for this. And I find that so inspiring to go, whatever comes, I'm going to make it through these countries. I'm going to build connections in these countries. And my cat is right next to me every step of the way. And if it can't be the bus, it's going to be a walk or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, having her be with me is definitely non-negotiable because I have had her for 11 years. So she's been
Wow.
my little bestie for like most of my adult life. So yeah, it definitely is non-negotiable. I think I wouldn't recommend somebody who's already traveling to go out and get themselves a cat because I mean, it's easier than you think and there's also a lot of challenges as well. But yeah, if you already have one and that's what's stopping you from traveling, it's definitely possible.
Yeah. I want to sort of help shift some stereotypes, some fears for our audience, myself included. You've mentioned just in passing right now a few countries that personally I would be really afraid to travel to.
Hmm.
Afghanistan being just one of them, right? As a human, as a woman, alone, right? In your case, you were traveling through these countries alone and doing your workshop. You shared some really heartwarming and presumptions defying stories. I wonder if you would be willing to share some of the unforgettable moments that you had along your journey that you just would never want to give back, maybe didn't even expect, and that also, defy some of the image that we may have that makes us afraid to travel through certain countries.
Yeah, absolutely. So Afghanistan was definitely a life-changing experience for me and a huge, maybe the biggest highlight of this trip, just because, of course, everybody, as soon as I said I was doing this journey, all my friends were like, okay, but what route are you going to take? And we started to look at the map and they were like, okay, but Afghanistan is there. You're not going there, right? And I was like, no, I think I am because basically especially when it comes to Muslim countries, I know that a lot of people say that it's unsafe for a white woman to travel through. I cannot tell you the amount of people who told me, oh, with your blonde hair, you're going to be a target. And they weren't just talking about Afghanistan, but Muslim countries. And I strongly believe that that's a negative stereotype that is not accurate. And that's just something that people get led by the media to believe is true when it's really not. I've had a lot of Muslim friends throughout my life. I've met a lot of Muslim people in various countries, and that has just never been my experience. I've never experienced aggression from somebody, And so I just was like, I have a really strong belief that these are stereotypes that are perpetuated by the media and not by actual facts. And when it came to Afghanistan specifically, I just decided to do some of my own research instead of reading the news and joined, a Facebook group, Afghanistan Travel, I think it's called, and just, started to look at some of the posts that people were posting in there. And I saw that there were women who traveled there alone. There were even some women who drove there in a car by themselves. There was a woman who rode a motorcycle through Afghanistan. And I just saw, okay, you know what? I think that once again, this is the media portraying a country to be a certain way when it's not necessarily. And also another thing that I found out is that often in countries where there are certain types of conflict, it's usually not the whole country that's dangerous. Usually it's just portions of the country that have their conflicts that are going on, but they are there's a lot of security. It's not like you could just stumble in there with your backpack and end up in a war zone or something. It's just not possible that would happen. Those places are really marked off. You do not go into those places unless you're, reporter or actually involved in the conflict. And so that I just knew that, okay, I'm going to go in. If there's anywhere I'm not allowed to go, they're not going to let me go there. And people are just going to be like people everywhere, which is they're always kind, always wanting to lend a helping hand if you need something. And so I really wasn't afraid to go there. And it was proven true literally within the first 30 minutes of crossing the border, I was already in someone's home, invited for lunch and meeting their family and their kids, playing with my cat and people helping me. I have never been helped so much and taken care of so much as I was in Afghanistan. And it's like people were saying, you're going to be a target. They're going to see you alone and see you as a victim. No, they were like, that's a woman alone. Let's help her, which I had a feeling that was going to be the case. And it was much more so than I ever expected. But It's like, I remember at one point I was camping in the middle of the night because I had driven my car and it got dark and I needed a place to sleep. And so I often go camping. So I just like pulled my car into a random place, and there ended up being some confusion with the Taliban there. It wasn't an issue, but they were just like, who is this and why is she here? And they didn't speak any English, and we couldn't understand each other. We were just going around in circles. And this was only 2 days after I'd entered the country. And by then I already had two helpful people in my WhatsApp who had offered to help me if I need it. So I called one of them up and he translated, and we got everything sorted and everything was fine. But it's like, not even 2 days, but like literally as soon as I crossed the border, I had people's phone numbers of people who were like, help us if you run into any problems. And so when there was a minor issue, there was somebody there who could translate and we got everything sorted out. I mean, I could tell a lot of stories, but there was even one where, this is one that I shared in the workshop, with this guy who I met when I was hiking with some friends in a mountain. And he said, oh yeah, my dream is to be an actor in America. And so I got out my camera and I was filming him. I'm like, okay, so what would you like to say, as to the rest of the world, to the American people? And he thinks about it for a minute and then he's like, the American soldiers were here and they destroyed everything in our village. They destroyed our crops, our houses, our bodies. And then they left, but they just left. There was no restitution, no recompense. They're just gone and they don't have to make amends for anything that they did here. And even his wife had her hand shot by American soldiers and she's unable to use it. And yet, despite that, he invites me and my friends over to his house to come try some pomegranates and some tea. And we walk into the house and we get this huge welcome, and everyone in the family comes to greet us. They give us, pomegranates, they give us tea, they visit with us. And so even though there are these issues between our countries, let's say, the people themselves are still just like, but still come over to my house and have a pomegranate.
And you actually did some beautiful act of charity for that family, didn't you?
Yeah. So I asked my friend after we left, I was like, what would it take actually to help this woman? Because obviously, there are doctors who can do surgery and repair hands and stuff. And my friend was like, honestly, the Red Cross helps people like this for free. All you have to do is provide your own transportation into Kabul, to the capital city, accommodation, probably just be $200. So I just started to post on social media about this and was like, donate money to this PayPal link, and people donated $200, and I was able to go back to that village and give them the money. Which was really amazing because I didn't have his phone number or his address saved. I just had to go completely by memory. Didn't even remember his name, and somehow I ended up making it back to the right village. It was pretty amazing. Ended up running into him, by chance. It's like, oh wow, I'm so glad I found you, and we were able to give them the money, and it just like really cemented that friendship. Like, I'm just excited for the next time I go to Afghanistan and go and visit them again and like see what they're up to. I can totally see it being a long-term friendship.
Wow. Mia, I could spend another couple of hours just asking you, and then what? And then what? And tell me the next story and the next story. And I hopefully will get a chance to have coffee or a glass of wine to do just that. But I'm just really moved by the few snippets that you're sharing with us. And I really thank you for your transparency. I think one thing that really stands out to me about not just the stories you share, but how you steer the stories is that you seem to have an unwavering belief in humanity's kindness. And
Absolutely.
You lead with that kindness, and your stories really serve as a reminder, I believe, that the people aren't their government, and that what's happening on the ground can run contrary even to what's being portrayed in the media. And having been an expat to Germany, where I was born and raised for the last 10 years, and having traveled extensively through the Americas and through Asia in particular, I've also found that at the core, people are welcoming, people are kind, people want to help, right? And if we can approach our neighbors, the person next to us, wherever we are, on the bus, on the bike lane, we're surrounded by bicycles or by motorcycles around us, if we can just lead with the assumption that people have love and kindness in their heart, we can find that love and kindness. And then with every conversation, with every act of charity even, we can begin to spread that kindness a little more.
Absolutely. And I do believe it is that expectation. You create what you expect to be there. You find what you look for. And so having that expectation, I think, makes a big difference, because I have met people who have traveled and they've said, oh, but I've had this or that experience or whatever. And of course, minor things do happen here and there, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like people who have primarily negative stories to tell about people in various countries are primarily looking for those situations.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And if you are actively believing that people are there for you and people are kind and people are good, and you are putting that out into the world, whether it's, offering somebody a ride, or, there are a million ways to be kind to people, give somebody money who's asking for it, or just whatever it is, whatever you can do in various situations, you're just creating that reciprocity.
Sure. And guess what? That kindness translates into business, because people want to do business with kind people, with people who really walk their talk and who embody their values. So let's transition into business. You shared with us at the workshop that your revenue increased by 60% doing this trip from Serbia to Vietnam. What did the trip do to your business?
Yeah, so it was amazing. I mean, going into this kind of intense travel where I was often off grid, no Wi-Fi connection, unpredictable schedule, was very different than what I was used to as an expat in Serbia, because I live alone. I don't have kids. Like, I had basically all the time in the world to devote to my business before, but now this just wasn't the case. And one of the huge takeaways that I had was things can get done a lot more quickly and efficiently when you have a limited amount of time to do it in. So what I ended up doing, and I didn't stick to this 100%, but in general, this was my rule of thumb, was basically 3 days in a city where I've booked a Airbnb or hotel with good Wi-Fi, where I just concentrate on what's going to make me money right now. Focus on that for 3 days, do the promotion or do the fulfillment, whatever it ended up being. And then 3 to 4 days where I could be out either in nature on a hike or driving to a different city or whatever, just exploring things. And that ended up being plenty of time for me to, just to like run the promotions that I wanted to run and make the sales that I wanted to make. And it just also allowed me to not the things that are just fluff and time fillers and not necessary for actually making sales and bringing in money.
Yeah, for sure. There's a more urgent sense of prioritization and really looking at, as you said, what is it that moves the needle on my bank account? What is it that helps me increase my revenue and expand my impact today? And if you really honor that question and then just act on the answer, you'll realize there's a lot of fluff that we were told to do that actually keeps us stuck. And that might even prevent us from not just having more free time, but from making more money.
Definitely. Yeah.
So let's talk about value-based messaging. I love how you talk about, in my own words, integrating who you are in the world into your messaging, into your copywriting. Talk to us about.
Right. Yeah. And that was definitely something that, talk about aha moments. I had a particularly strong one when I was camping in the Kazakhstan desert. I was 4 days in the desert, no Wi-Fi connection, no interactions with other people at all. It was a very powerful experience. And I had this big moment where I was like, I just want to give myself to this trip and this journey. Before, I had been posting every single day on social media about my business, selling my offers. And at this point, I was like, you know what? I just want to use my social media to talk about this trip. I want to tell my stories. I want to, just have fun with my social media and not try to stress about balancing the two so much. And so I did. I just went in and started using social media to talk about my journey, talk about my trip, have fun. And I use my email list. It's not a big email list. It's pretty small. And I just used that once a month to run monthly sales. And what I did when I ran these monthly sales was I made sure that I incorporated my values into these, which is a principle that I've been doing all along. I've had my business for 6 years, and all along I've been talking about, copywriting isn't just about making sales. It's also about showing up as a confident woman underneath patriarchal systems where the patriarchy tells us to be quiet and not speak our opinions and not ask for money for the things that we do. Being a citizen under capitalist systems who are in a capitalist world, and yet we don't want to be of it, so to speak. And how do we approach money and selling in a more ethical way that speaks to empathy and connection and love and understanding people, rather than just trying to create consumerist objects that people don't need and they spend their money on. That's always been a part of my messaging. And so that's something that I did maintain as well as I was traveling, things like talking about visiting countries like Afghanistan and removing stereotypes, or visiting countries and doing things that help people and living that talk about, those who have more, helping those who have less, kinds of things. And the people who signed up to work with me in various capacities were always saying, I want to work with you because you're so bold sharing your beliefs online, and I wanted to be able to do the same thing. I want to do something about what I see going on in the world right now, right? Especially now, 2025, there are more issues than ever. It feels like society is going backwards. And we want to do something about it. And so they're saying, I want to do something about it. I feel like you can help me do something about it beyond just making sales in my business. And so it ended up becoming like my niche, so to speak. And as we all know, when you niche down and you get really specific and when you have a movement, that's what makes people want to get on board with it. And that's what they want to invest their money into, rather than just somebody who's out there saying, I can help you make money or whatever it is.
Yeah, for sure. I hear two big things that I really want the audience to be able to hone in on. One is, again, for those who are listening, who have just quit their job, who are in the trenches of launching their business, a big shift that we all have to make when we turn from being an employee to being an entrepreneur is that as an employee, oftentimes we get paid for not speaking our opinion, right? But representing our boss's values or the lack thereof, speaking hyperbolically. But that's essentially the case, right? We sort of have to perform a 180 when we become an entrepreneur, because people don't just buy the transformation. They buy the transformation from the person they truly connect with. And so we have to do the work to be willing to not showcase, but to simply, show people who we are, what we care for, what we care about, and why that matters. Now, the second piece is making money is great. Now I can get all of the massages in the world, and I can buy all of the dresses I want to get, and I can get a haircut every 6 weeks. But there is something even more fulfilling that I can do with my money, and that is contribute to changing the world for the better. And God, this world needs it, right? This world needs money in the hands of people who have a good heart and who, like you and I, believe in the kindness and the good and in the love that people have in their heart everywhere. And the more money we have, the more we can amplify the change that we want to see in the world, right? I always say, like, if Elon Musk can put his billions towards changing the world, I can put my thousands and my millions towards changing the world as well. I just think that I'm a better person than him.
Yeah. And imagine us good people creating real wealth, and then we get that political influence. And that's where change happens.
Yes, that's where change happens. Money, for better or for worse, is power, but we get to use that as being a part of the solution, not as being something we stand against. We get to utilize this as part of the solution. So for people listening, Mia, can you walk us through your framework of creating value-based marketing? What are some of the questions that we need to answer in order to really, showcase the best of us and really connect with the right people without having to infringe on our privacy, right? Because that we don't want to do. We still want to show up professionally. We want to have a separation between this is the brand and this is just Dina. What are some of the questions we can begin to answer and then act on in our business?
Yeah. Well, I think a great starting point is just to ask, okay, and everybody asks this in business, what are your top 3 values, right? When you're making your website, when you're making your brand profile, what are your values? And the common ones are freedom, honesty. Yeah, I don't know. Those are the top 2 that come to my mind that just about everybody says. And it's like, that's where you take that value and you really think about what that means to you. So if you take freedom, what does freedom mean to you? For a lot of people who are working to travel or trying to leave a job so they can travel, it means flexibility of your schedule. It means location independence. It means, freedom to not work when you don't want to work and those kinds of things. So that's what that means to you, right? We often hear people talk about the ripple effect, where it's like you change one person's life and they go and change someone's life and they go. And while that's true, it's obviously not enough to really create change in the world, because while the coaching industry is growing by the billions, the world is not, the world is actually changing for the worse. So it's not enough. So we have to think about, instead of an individual level, we have to think about a collective level, because it's systems that are the root of all of our problems. It's not one person here or there that's bad who's like ruining everything for everyone. And so we can't change one person here or there and expect it to make a difference on these systems that affect all of us, no matter where in the world you live. And so that's where I like to say, so what does then freedom mean for the collective level rather than an individual level? So when we look at that, if we take, if we take the value of freedom, okay, freedom of location, independence, well, think about all the people in the world who are unable to live their dream because they are in a country where the exchange rate is so much lower that they're on, let's say, even if they are working online, they're on Fiverr working for so little that they could never move to another country. What about people who are trapped in terms of their mindset? They're not able to go out and be confident and ask for the money that they deserve for these things. Again, this is systemic issue rather than just individual. This isn't helping someone with their mindset. This is helping someone become aware of the system that is trapping them in a mindset that is holding them back. And so that's where in your messaging, you can then talk about what this means for the client who's in front of you and what it means on a bigger level, right? So even if it's as simple as, let's say you help people with their mindset, even if it's as simple as not just saying, hey, you've got this and this and this issue that's holding you back, which can perpetuate, again, feelings of worthlessness and taking all the responsibility on someone and just continuing the cycle and bringing it out to the bigger picture, which is you've got these mindsets that are holding you back because you got them from X system, which is making you feel this way. And what we're going to do is work on your blocks, and we're going to decondition you from this system and make you more aware of this system so that you have the tools that you need to not internalize this and create more shame and more feelings that you're not enough and you're not doing something right, but understand where that's coming from. And this is where selling happens on an ethical level as well, because it's not blaming people for their mistakes or problems or whatever they're not doing. It's just opening up their awareness to see where their blockages are coming from.
We don't do any pain point marketing here. We're just really looking at, this is the opportunity, right? Let me help you realize this opportunity, because then X, Y, and Z, right? What does this value mean on the greater level?
Absolutely.
So, wow, I feel like I have a really big question for you, but I know you can tackle it. Based on everything that you've learned about business, about life, about being an expat, about traveling by plane, by foot, by bike, by, everything. Like, what is the message that you want to share with people who are ready to scale in their business, with people who feel really stuck in their jobs and are afraid to leave and become an entrepreneur, with people who just look around and go, oh my God, another day in this community, in this job, stuck in a community with people of this and that mindset, and I might just no longer be happy. What's the message you want to share with those who are ready to get themselves unstuck?
It is a big question. And I think all of these things are boiled down to a fear, right? or a feeling of I'm ready to leave this and I want to get into this, but I'm either feeling overwhelmed, which is tied to fear, right? Or I'm feeling afraid, or I don't know if I can do it. And I think that this applies to anybody at any level, which is just take a step and try, as simple as that may sound. I'm thinking about this situation where I had to get rid of the car and try to get my cat on all this public transportation and everything. And what I realized is I either have the choice to call it quits for now, and just say, okay, this is not going to work out beyond this point. I don't know, or rather to say, I don't know if it will work out beyond this point. Or I can just give it a try and see how it goes, do the first thing, and then make my assumption about, or make an actual fact-based analysis of whether it works or not. And I think so often, and this is something I experienced a lot in this journey, was people telling me, you won't be able to do that, or you won't be able to do this. Cannot tell you how many times people said that. And whether it's a hiking trail that they said, there's no way you can do that without a guide, or whether it's, a campsite, or whether it's a country to get into, or whether it, whatever thing it is. And what I found is that there is always a way around whatever obstacle you have. Oftentimes it doesn't look the way you hoped or expected it to look. And often you do have to pave a new path. That's the thing. You have to pave a new path. It's like, yeah, of course. I looked on Google, I looked on Instagram to see if there were people with resources about traveling with pets on buses and things like that. No, I did not find anything. So I had to pave a new path. Same thing with vehicles and there were some situations with certain borders where they changed visa regulations last minute, and it's like, will I be able to cross the border? And there's nobody there to say yes you can or no you can't. There's just people saying no you can't because they're going off of their own limitations or what they believe will be the case. But again, pave a new path and just try it and go into the uncertainty. And that's where you find your most, the famous quote, necessity is the mother of innovation. That's where you find your most innovative, creative steps, is by realizing, okay, that did not work. And now I'm here, like in this unknown space. Let me just see what kind of thing I can try. And you have to be willing to try those things, whether it's a business thing, for years, I posted every single day on Instagram for my business, not just on the feed, but also on the stories. That's basically like 2 posts every single day promoting my business, and then realizing, okay, what's really true for me and aligned for me is I don't do this anymore. And just going ahead and giving it a try. Like, what's the worst that happens? I have to come back on and post about my business again if it doesn't work. You have to be willing to give it a try and adjust things. And I think a lot of people aren't willing to do that. A lot of people look at, what have other people done? What are people around me saying is possible, and basing their opinions off that. But you have to measure your ability to do something based on your ability to do something, not other people's.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yes. 100% to that. Every time like a mic drop moment like this happens, I just like to remind the audience that you do have a replay button on your phone. So maybe just go back a couple of minutes and listen to this again. I think it'll be worth your while. And, I think fear and being scared is sort of the name of the game of life, of traveling, of entrepreneurship, right? And you're right. That is really what brings it all together. However, we have a choice to look at that fear and not ignore it. That would be really dumb. But to look at that fear and go, okay, great. What are you here to tell me? Are you maybe perhaps in fact here to help me forge a new path?
Right.
Maybe that fear is just excitement. Maybe that fear is just, fear of the unknown. And you just have to be willing to take one step forward and see what's behind that curtain, see what's on the other side of that door. And we do all want to work on our fear of rejection. Right? I find that's what holds a lot of people back, right? What will mom say about this? What will my boss think about this? What are my in-laws going to think if I start this business, right? And in letting the potential of other people rejecting us run our lives, we're rejecting ourselves. And if this conversation brings you nothing else, then I think it's really the invitation to allow yourself to step into your boldest dreams, to do the crazy thing, to do the weird thing, and to have this idea of going through life, this way of going through life, replace the command by society of going through life in a particular way, in a conditioned way, in a way that keeps patriarchy in place, in a way that keeps the systems and the norms in place that help some to power while oppressing others, politically, socially, financially, as far as mindset is concerned, right? And we as entrepreneurs, we get to be a part of the solution. And you're right, one client won't solve the world's problems, but allowing ourselves to really build a business and forge a life that is a little bigger than us, that might. So my last question to you, Mia, is, and I truly do thank you for sharing your wisdom and your path through life with us today, is what does freedom mean to you?
Great question. And it's funny because sometimes freedom, once we have total freedom, we can freak out that we have it. I found this to be the case on this trip. It's like, I could go anywhere in the world. I could do anything. I could do anything with my business. I could do anything with my life. I could go to any place in the world. And then that produces anxiety. Because you're like, nobody's telling me what to do. I don't have just like two choices. But I think that really, really freedom is not having to be attached to the result of a decision that you make. Because really, at the end of the day, what stops us from doing the thing that we want? It's thinking about what's going to be the outcome. And I think, and I've invested heavily in personal development and energy work and spiritual teachers and business coaches and all of this. And I think the thing that gave me the most freedom, even though that was the outcome of all those things that I invested in, that was what was promised. The thing that gave me the most freedom was realizing this investment that I made doesn't have to bring me X amount of money. This trip that I make doesn't have to bring me insert blank insight to whatever question that I'm asking. Whatever like outcome that I think has to be tied to something, that's losing your freedom. When you have freedom, it's being able to go into whatever idea you have or whatever thing you want to do and not being tied to an outcome, but just embracing it for what it actually is and appreciating it for what it is without thinking it should be something else. Maybe that's too abstract. I don't know, but that's my opinion on freedom and what it means to me.
I love that so much. It's like freedom means non-attachment.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, Mia, how can we keep in touch with you? How can we learn from you? How can we follow along on your travels? Please plug away.
Yes. Yeah. I would love to connect with anybody. If you follow me on Instagram, it's mia.kercher. Definitely come and say hi and let me know where you found me. You can also follow my copywriting account and learn things about copywriting and values-based messaging there. That's just mia.copywriter. And then Dina's going to link a free resource that I have for you, which is a free 31 email subject line ideas. These are specifically non-broy subject lines for entrepreneurs who are ethically minded, spiritually minded, and it's full of lots of different copywriting techniques and things. So that's going to be a great way to also get on my email list and see what kinds of things I share on there as well.
Thank you so much for sharing these resources with us. As you said, we'll be sure to link them in the show notes. Thank you for sharing your journey through life and business with us. For everyone listening, make sure that you spread some love, spread the episode, spread the conversation. Talk to your friends about this conversation, about the insights that came up for you as you were listening. Spark the conversation that you want to be a part of. And as always, I leave you with the invitation to create more freedom today than you did yesterday, and maybe just today and for the rest of your life. Also, become really intentional about what your freedom can bring to the world. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the podcast, Your Business Untethered, hosted by me, Dina, creator of Way of the Founder. I love hearing from you, so please drop me a DM on Instagram sharing your insights from this episode. And if you are ready to take the leap, my free guide, Plot Your 9-to-5 Escape in 7 days, and the Freedom Business Scorecard are in the show notes for you to grab. If this episode created change for you, please leave a review and be a friend and share this with a friend or colleague that you love. Until next time, please wake every day, seize the day, defy the norm and create your very own type of freedom. I love you. I do mean it.